My mic.
Check.
Mine is.
Hear me now? There we go.
Yeah.
Better. Good to go? All right, everybody. Thank you for coming tonight to the regular meeting of the Reno City Planning Commission. Today's date is Wednesday, October 18th, 2023. We'll start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Vormeyer, will you lead the way, please?
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, moving on to item number 2. Michelle, roll call, please.
Harris Armstrong,
Here.
Manny Becerra,
Here.
Arthur Munoz,
Here.
Carrie Romeyer,
Here.
Alex Felto is absent, Sylvia Villanueva,
Here.
JD Draculich.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Moving to item number 3, public comment. This item is for either public comment on any action item or for any general public comment. Michelle, do we have any requests to speak forms for this? Voicemails? People on Zoom?
Okay, let me read this into the record first. Members of the public may call into the meeting to provide public comment by using the Zoom link provided on the agenda, specifically https://links.reno.gov/3QWNXBQ. It should be noted for those in the audience that comments are to be addressed to the Planning Commission as a whole. Comments heard under this item will be limited to 3 minutes per person and may pertain to matters both on and off the Planning Commission agenda. Please note that the Planning Commission may not take action upon any matters not agendized for possible action on today's agenda. When you are called on for public comment, please state your name for the record and begin speaking. The timer will begin when you say your name, and you will be afforded 3 minutes. If you are an attendee in the Zoom meeting and would like to make public comment at this time, please raise your hand. Lastly, while in the room, please be respectful. Warnings will be issued by the presiding officer if there is disruptive behavior, and you will be asked to leave chambers if the behavior continues. With that, we did receive one voicemail. We did not receive any correspondence, request to speak forms, or public comment on this item, but we will go into the voicemail, and that was forwarded to the Planning Commission. It was just general in nature.
Yeah, I'm calling. I'm resident in Reno, Nevada. Live in Liberty Street myself. Notice a public notice now. The date is past due. Reading about it that some staff made some report to the Planning Commission. I don't know what is exactly Planning Commission, but my question is why they don't send anything by the mail. I have a mailing address that they have public notice. Mail is for public too. And I think anything the city must do, when this date is past due, I need to know.
And that is it for the voicemail.
Thank you. And anybody in the chambers wish to speak on general public comment, you may come up and fill out a form. Just notable, if you do wish to speak tonight on a specific item, we will get to that. So if no one wants to speak on general public comment, seeing none, we will close item 3 and move to item number 4, approval of minutes for possible action. Item 4.1, the Reno City Planning Commission regular meeting of August 16th.
Chair, I will actually have to abstain from this one as I was not in attendance for that meeting.
Okay.
Commissioner Villanueva, motion to approve.
All right, we have a motion.
Second.
Motion is second. Motion is second. All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Those are approved. Item number 4.2, the Reno City Planning Commission regular meeting of September 6th.
Commissioner Armstrong, I'll move to approve.
Got a motion?
Commissioner Villanueva, second.
Michelle, did you have an issue?
I did.
Commissioner Armstrong. We got a motion and a second, I believe. All in favor of approving the minutes? Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, minutes are approved. Closing item number 4, moving to item number 5, public hearings. Any person who has chosen to provide his or her public comment When a public hearing is heard, will need to so indicate on the request to speak form provided to the secretary. Alternatively, you may provide your comment when item 3, public comment, is heard at the beginning of this meeting. So we'll start off with item 5.1, which is case number LDC 24-00013, Hitch Tea House Special Use Permit Extension. And it looks like, will we have a presentation from the applicant? Thank you. Feel free to state your names. Thank you.
Hi, it's Elise Berg. This
Can you
is
bring
actually
the mic up to your?
Justin Berg.
sorry.
There you go.
So this is an existing project that got approved already, but I was not able to complete the project due to some reason. So I mean, we can actually go to the last slide if you guys like, or do you want me to go over the project?
Whatever you feel like.
You have control of the slide at the podium there.
Oh, this one? Okay. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but this location is on Dickerson Road. It's called the Hitch at Sierra Water Gardens. So my main business is I do little like tiny weddings. It's about 20 people. So it's a very unique project. So basically would like to create it like a little event center, do the celebration, and it's basically going to be like a little tea house. Our max capacity going to be about 50 people. I don't even participate having that many people at that location. It is a mainly outdoor space. So my business is usually runs from literally May to end of November. So I have a really short amount of time to actually make some income. So that's one of the reasons that I wanted to come up with this idea and, create a little bit more revenue. I was not able to finish the project because unfortunately right after I got the approval, COVID hit. So that was a very struggle for like me and a lot of small business owners. And then we had a really hard time finding general contractors. I'm actually still having a hard time. I met with a couple of them, so I'm waiting on a bid. But I think it's usually Tasty is a very small project for them, which is a huge project for me. And then again, it's mainly it's an outdoor place, so the most of the stuff is gonna be in outdoor. So we had some crazy winters. And then right now everything is obviously very expensive. So inflation kind of affects my business as well, like any other businesses. But the scope of the project hasn't changed. I'm not making any changes. I did receiving a couple of the bids, which it's recommended from the city as well. And then I'm hoping to start the project in a month. I am paying for everything for improving the site, and I don't own the property. That was another challenge that I was kind of going through. So that's something that I'm also working with my landlords as well.
Okay, if that's it, that's all right. And we'll get a presentation from city staff and we'll be able to ask you some more questions if needed. Okay?
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, presentation from staff. Go for it.
Good evening, Planning Commission. My name is Brooke Oswald. I'm Associate Planner with the Development Services. Case before you tonight is a special use permit. That is a term we used in our prior code. That is now would be a conditional use permit that you're seeing just for some of the that are new on council. Or sorry, Planning Commission. The original special use permit was approved back in April of 2021. As a lot has happened kind of in this time, and as we followed through this, that special use permit was required at that time for the residential adjacency to establish this outdoor event center. In that approval, there are a number of conditions that really start to address those potential impacts could have on those surrounding projects. They did come in for an administrative extension, which is allowed by our code, which gave them another 12 months. That is expiring in October 21st, just here in a few days, and they're coming in for this request. Per Reno Municipal Code, for an additional 6 months to their original approval date, it does require that we go to a public hearing, and that's why we're here tonight. The project site is generally located on Dickerson Road. If you're familiar, you can see the warehouse buildings and train tracks in Fourth to the north. And to the south, we have the beautiful Truckee River and Idlewild Park. And you can see the residents are the smaller units just to the right of the yellow there. Staff is supportive of this request based on what they've been working through to do this, and I will leave you with this motion and recommend approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Appreciate it. All right, we will now go to the commissioners for disclosures. Commissioner Wormeyer, will you start us off, please?
I'm familiar with the site.
Same. I'm familiar with the site.
Commissioner Armstrong, same disclosures.
Commissioner Munoz, I am familiar with the project, and I believe I'm the only one that was here when they brought this forward, so I look forward to discussion on this.
Commissioner Villanueva, I visited the site. I'm very familiar with it.
Commissioner Draculich, familiar with the site, and actually Commissioner Munoz, I think it was my second meeting. Yeah, right into it. So, all right, right on. We'll now open it up to public comment. Michelle, do we have any request to speak forms on this item?
I did not receive any request to speak forms, no correspondence, and no voicemails.
Okay, thank you. Anybody in the chambers wish to speak on item 5.1? Seeing none, we will close public comment and give it to the commissioners for questions of the staff or applicant or discussion.
I'll start, Commissioner Munoz. I don't have any questions. I do remember this came through, and specifically, I remember the residents and the businesses around the area being in favor of this. There was no concerns from the commission at that time, and for me, I don't feel there's anything has changed, and I think it's a great addition to really upgrading that street in that area. So I look forward to giving a yes on this project if it goes through.
Looks like we made it into discussion. Oh, Commissioner Villanueva, please.
Question for staff. Hi, Brooke. If we give this extension and they don't make it, and they're unable for whatever reason, and they need another extension, what happens at that point? Do they need to go through the same process?
They have exhausted at this point their ability for that extension, so it would take that reapplication and going through that process. So as I understand, the 6 months really is, there's some building permits that per their conditions that they need to clear up. So this sort of gives them the time to finish that up, and I think they're moving forward to get that done, as you heard.
Okay, great, thank you.
Commissioner Villanueva, just to clarify, under our code, if they were not able to essentially perfect the permit within 6 months, they would have to wait a minimum of 1 year before they could reapply for the same use.
Thank you, no further questions.
Okay, awesome. Commissioner Becerra, please.
Sure. I just want to echo Commissioner Muniz's sentiment. I think it's a great project. It's actually something that I appreciate y'all doing over on Dickerson Road. I guess I would only extend a bit of faith or hope that you're able to get it to the finish line and see your dream through. So I'll be approving this as well.
Commissioner Armstrong, ready to make a motion?
Please.
In case LDC 24-00013 Hitch Tea House Special Use Permit Extension, based on compliance with applicable findings, I move to approve the request for an extension of the special use permit, SUP LDC 20-0070, subject to the original conditions of approval.
We have a motion.
Commissioner Romeyer, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll go for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none. All right, congrats, your extension's approved. Thank you. All right, we will now move on to item 5.2, case number LDC 24-00012. That's all I got there, and looks like we have the applicant, Andy Durling from Wood Rogers. He's gonna give us a presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. For the record, Andy Durling with Wood Rogers, representing the applicant. What we have before you tonight is a tentative map extension for the remaining lots of what was the Village 4 and Club Cottages tentative map associated with Ranchera. So just kind of giving you a little bit of Wayfinding here, this is the Ranchera Master Plan. Village 4 is in the brown. Oop, can't, oh, you're pointing to it. Ha. I thought it was on the overhead, sorry. Village 4 here in the brown, just behind the event center. The event center is the new club at Ranchera. It's a repurposed former mansion of Ranchera. And so the Village 4 was perfected. The final map was recorded in 2021. And so that started the clock on the subsequent phase, which is the remaining 8 lots that are located in the event center here. Next image. This was the original tentative map. It contained 66 units on the west side in Village 4, and then the 8 units over here for a total of 74. So these are 8 duet-style, 2-story townhomes, essentially. They were intended to be sort of like a little bit of an experiment to see what may work kind of in this kind of club cottage resort living right in front of the mansion there. The mansion's only been operating as a club for a few years, and they're still trying to really, kind of figure out all of that, and want to use the additional 2 years to make sure the market conditions are correct and appropriate for this type of use. So asking for the additional 2 years, just as a matter of kind of edification. So tentative maps, the first final map has to be approved within 4 years from the approval of the tentative map. So this overall tentative map was approved in 2019. It actually wouldn't expire until this year, but because they recorded that first final map early, it actually condenses the time frame. So we're still, in a reasonable time frame for the life of this tentative map, and respectfully request the Planning Commission approve an additional 2-year extension. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
Thank you. And we'll get a presentation from the city. Looks like Brooke again.
Good evening, Planning Commission. For the record, Brooke Oswald, Associate Planner. Andy sort of went through the nuts and bolts in this, and so I'll keep my presentation fairly quick. Just looking at the project site, once again, we're looking at 74 units that were originally approved. I was the planner on this and ran the tentative map through, so very familiar with the project. The buildings are currently, if you've been out there, visited the site, the buildings that have been final mapped are currently under construction, and that just above the clubhouse there is being constructed. The yellow site here is the additional 8 units that were approved back at that time that we're here for tonight. They did file their tentative map, and as Andy mentioned, that tentative map, they have 4 years, but once they file that, they have 2 years for sequential parcel maps or final maps. And so that's why they've shortened their time period, and they've come to ask for a 2-year extension. That is allowed per NRS, and I'll leave you with a motion based on our staff's recommendation to continue and allow this extension. Thank you.
Thank you, Brooke. Appreciate it. We'll go to the commissioners for disclosures. Commissioner Villanueva, will you start us off, please?
Commissioner Villanueva, familiar with the site. Also received emails, 3 or 4 emails that I reviewed.
Commissioner Munoz, same disclosures.
Commissioner Armstrong, I'm familiar with the site, and I read and received emails.
Commissioner Becerra, same disclosures as Commissioner Muniz and Villanueva.
Commissioner Rohrmeyer, same disclosures.
Commissioner Dracula, same disclosures. Okay, we will now open it up to public comment. We do have some requests to speak forms. Glenn Gray wishes to speak in opposition, if you'd like to come up and speak. And after Glenn will be Christine.
Good evening. My name's Glenn Gray. I live at 730 Cantor Way in Ranchera. Commissioners, there are many of us in this community that have just found out about these condominiums being built on the front lawn of the historic Bill Harrah's mansion, and we are concerned and distressed about it. This was not disclosed in any of the literature, any of the websites, anything where we bought into Ranchera when we did. There is nothing that showed that there were going to be condominiums on the front lawn of the mansion. I sent you a some words that I spoke at the city council meeting before, and it was concern about the density and the traffic problem we're having in Ranchera. If right now, at this point in time, nothing changes, the current zoning and development will add 510 more cars to Ranchera. That's based on 2 cars per resident. We already have huge traffic problems. We need a new traffic study before anything is approved anywhere in Ranchera. It's a nightmare right now. Try and make a left-hand turn out of Talbot between 3 and 5. You'll wait 3 light cycles just to get out. The traffic backing up on the Kitsky Gate goes through the roundabout all the way out. People, we're in trouble now, let alone more density. The developer's executive summary refers to building club cottages in front of the Bill Harrah mansion. What do you think a club cottage is? Imagine a cottage, a small little structure, maybe tiny with maybe white. That's not what we're getting here. We're getting condominiums, 2-story condominiums in the front lawn of Bill Harrah's mansion, of our clubhouse. We don't want that. Nobody wants that, except the developers, of course. These 4 multi-story, they call them duet buildings, massive condominium structures. We're concerned that the developers once again attempted to do as they please without regard to the members of the community that live there. Their only concern is how much money they can make regardless of the effect on us. The residents, and by the way, their prior customers, traffic, property values, open spaces, public safety are the last of their concerns. We want you to make it your first concern. Common sense suggests that nothing should be built on the front lawn of Bill Harrah's mansion and our iconic Ranchera clubhouse. We as a community invested in Ranchera, expecting our clubhouse asset to be accessible, safe, and its beautiful view unencumbered by ill-placed, massive condominiums.
And Mr. Gray, your 3 minutes are up. I apologize, sir. Thank you. Got that right? All right, next to speak is Christine Speed. She wishes to speak in opposition. And after Christine Speed is Walter Rundon.
Good evening. Another opportunity for Ranchera.
Could you bring the microphone down to you and then state your name for the record, please?
Thank you. Christine Speed, that's better. Another opportunity for Ranchera to engage in its civic duty to appear at City Hall. I am going to be a no. I know I haven't been asked, but I am a no on the entire proposition for the request for a 2-year time extension, because I'm actually against the entire proposition that more 3-story duet villas should be built anywhere on Ranchera. I'd like to call your attention to the fact that there is a mishmash of land designations on that front lawn. Ranchera Holdings submits maps to you and calls the entire east part of the mansion SMU. Well, the Ranchera PUD of 2018 calls that green area and pond part of Ranchera's required 40 acres of open space. And here's a little pet peeve. The city seems to confine its evaluation of projects only to the more generic reimagined Reno master plan. But what about the more specific Ranchera Plan Unit Development Handbook? The Ranchera PUD represents the design standards that should guide the development in Ranchera. And that development is supposed to build on equestrian history of the ranch. No, just 2-story farmhouses, and the current idea of these 3-story duets, like the current villas, are totally inconsistent with it. I used to call that Newport Beach in the mountains. The entire lawn and pond east of the mansion are supposed to be an open landscape and be a buffer to the developed village just below with only temporary structures allowed, and that is according to the Ranchera PUD. The cute little yellow dense area on the map that you got will be urban 3-story villas, and they are on the banks of a flood zone. And then that cute little dense area, it doesn't show the roads that will have to lead there, and they'll be coming right across the mansion, and we'll have all those trips, and we'll have all the garbage trucks trundling in front of the mansion, just ruining the clubhouse. So the PUD states that 30% of Ranchera land will be open space. And I just want to know, what is it? Is that open space described in the Ranchera PUD, or is it SMU submitted to you by Wood Rogers? This project will not contribute to the welfare of Ranchera community as Ranchera Holdings is committed to do. And it will degrade the mansion, the club, unfairly swallow up our green space, and degrade the property values of every homeowner at Ranchera. This, when you used to approve this in 2017, a bunch of just construction dirt, that doesn't exist anymore. We have a whole bunch of people who have invested a lot of money in these houses, and we don't want our property values devalued by this crazy construction. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Next up is Walter Rundin.
Yes.
Who wants to speak in opposition. You have 3 minutes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. I'm here as an outraged homeowner and resident and member of the Ranchera Club. I believe that people who have purchased properties in the Ranchera development are in the position of the proverbial frog that's in the pot. You don't throw them into the boiling water. You put them in the pot, everything's fine, and then you slowly turn up the heat. We have had a series of incidents where the rug has been pulled out of us. The rug being what we were represented to would be what we were buying. We were going to have a equine-based Western-style development. As the commission knows, the equestrian center is on the way out. That was a vital piece of why my wife and I, and by the way, I'm sorry, I and my wife Stephanie reside at 725 Marewood Trail. Love our house, but loved the original concept of Ranchera, which evidently was not the concept of the developers. Right now, if you drive down the Kitsky Gateway driveway into the development, there are little promotional placards that show the encouraging people to buy. This is a great place to live, style, this, that. And it has a picture of the clubhouse with a magnificent lawn in front of it. And on the east side where this project is supposed to go, do they show a row of condominiums? No. They have a nice line of green trees and a big expansive lawn, which is what I thought I was buying into and my wife thought she was buying into. I'm here to voice my outrage and to oppose this project or facilitating further development at any way I can. I don't know if stopping this extension will do anything to stop that development. I have a feeling we're at the mercy of the developers. But I really believe that the aesthetics of this are very important in that I think if they started construction there now to keep within the timeline, they would lose a lot of buyers as they drive in that front gate. They'd see these condos going up and they'd go, what? I don't need that in front of my clubhouse. And that's how I feel and my wife feels. And I urge you, do whatever you can to stop any further development at Ranchera. Enough is enough. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We had some people registered to speak on Zoom. We have Audrey Keller.
Please, go ahead.
Hello,
Audrey, can you hear us?
Audrey Keller.
Okay. You have
720 Marewood Trail, Ranchera resident. You know that I feel the same way. You should carefully consider and vote no on this proposal. And what they don't show in these maps is the beautiful, there's, from the lake ditch irrigation, water comes down that line, and exactly where they want to build is where there's a beautiful waterfall, the sound of moving water. The plantings are gorgeous. It's lovely. They're beautiful trees, and the developer just built a wedding area right on the lake. Some of you may have visited, some of you may know exactly where that is. According to this map, they're going to wipe that out, which means they're going to wipe out the parking that is adjacent to the club and adjacent to the swimming pool. My grandkids come to that pool. My grandkids come to summer camp, and they're talking about adding more housing, taking away the driveway access, and reducing the number of parking spots. That is not safe, that's not good for pedestrians, and that's not good for bicyclists at all. And I'd like you to carefully consider it as one of your options to vote no for that reason. But the open space reason is mission critical as far as I'm concerned. And they should not, the developers at the time, probably nobody realized what it was going to look like, how it was going to feel, but it is drop dead gorgeous. And I'm sure some of you would agree. Drop dead gorgeous, that beautiful front lawn. And we should not be polluting it with 8 more buildings for 16 more homes. And by the way, one of the staff reports talked about the market conditions and the vitality of the current projects. The market conditions are that those projects aren't selling. So why should you extend something where they're building another 60, 58, and they're not selling? So why would you extend another 2 years and add more to things that are not selling? So I'm going to ask you to carefully and respectfully say no to this developer and their extension. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
One more on Zoom.
Oh, sorry, nobody else is raising their hand, so I don't see anybody else, so.
While you're looking on there, see if anybody else in the chambers would like to speak on this item. If you have not yet given a request to speak form. Seeing none in the room, go back to the Zoom. Any other hands?
No.
Okay, we will close public comment on this item and open it up to the commissioners for questions of the applicant or staff. Commissioner Becerra, please.
Question for, I guess, either the applicant or our own staff. The residents do raise a lot of good concerns. If market conditions don't warrant development or haven't, and they continue not to 6 months from now, 12 months from now, what is the plan? Is it to not develop? Is it to pursue still something else?
So, you know, when this tentative map was approved in 2019, mind you, so this tentative map was approved, 4 years ago. Market conditions were very different, right? The housing market was very hot. Interest rates were 2.5–3%. So it was a very different climate. The first final map was approved in 2021, 2 years after the approval of the tentative map. That's, they took a year or so to kind of design because it's a condominium. So it requires, or I should say that phase is more of a condominium project in Village 4 where it's stacked flats. So that takes a little bit more design. You have to kind of have full architecture before you can move forward with the final map because you're mapping the airspace. I'm getting a little inside baseball here, but the mapping process for that takes a little longer. In general, it's about a year to process a final map. So 2 years to process the first final map is not unreasonable. Now, fast forward, they've waited, another 2 years. Since then, last year, obviously, interest rates have continued to escalate. The housing market has cooled significantly over that time, and so there's not an impetus to move forward right now, but there may be in the next 2 years. And so we want to preserve that right to be able to move forward with the additional 8 lots. We're only talking about 8 units, so 4 buildings. They're duets, so it's kind of split. They share a single wall down the middle. These are not, on this side, these were not proposed as the 3-story townhomes or the 3-story condominiums. They're more of a 2-story townhome. And so they wanted to preserve that right in order to see if market conditions kind of correct themselves, hopefully interest rates stabilize here in the next year or so, and they would be able to move forward.
Great, thank you. And a follow-up on that, what kind of community engagement has been done by the project developer? And I'm asking this because it sounds like there is a bit of disconnect from what we heard.
Sure. So with this tentative map extension, admittedly, we didn't do any outreach with this. This is a map, again, that was approved in 2019. At that time, there was a lot of community engagement, albeit most of the interested parties didn't live there at that time. Their homes weren't built yet. And so we were engaged with some of the adjacent property owners to the south of us that are actually outside of Ranchera. So we worked extensively at that time with the residents that were actually living there at that time. But no, with this extension, it's an approved project, essentially. We're looking for a little bit of extended time to be able to, make it to come to fruition. And just by way of comparison, right? I said in my statement, to begin with, the way that Nevada state law works, you have 4 years to record the first map. So had they used the entire 4-year period, we would be in 2023 recording the first map, and they'd have until 2025 to record the subsequent map. Because of the oddity in state law, once they record that first final map, it really condenses their time frame. So we're not talking about, we're not really outside of an unreasonable time frame for this existing tentative map, and request obviously that we get that additional 2 years to see if we can make it come to fruition.
Great, thank you. I'm going to take a step back for my fellow commissioners.
Any other questions, commissioners? Do we want to move into discussion? Commissioner Munoz.
Quick question. Commissioner Munoz, for the record. Brooke, this is going to be for you. Does there need to be any, let me rephrase it. What is the notification process for an extension like this?
Sure. So as we have things come in now, we are now providing a courtesy notice. That's not required by our RMC, but a courtesy notice goes out. And then prior to this hearing, the site will be posted 10 days prior, and then residents within 750 feet will receive a card in the mail that notifies them of this request for the extension. Additionally, we did have NAB 2 last night. This was scheduled for NAB 2. It was canceled. And so there would have been that additional process, but that was canceled.
That was scheduled for last night?
Last night, yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Andy, quick question for you. What was was any attempt made whatsoever to reach out to the residents prior to this extension request?
With this extension, no.
Okay.
No, there was extensive, as I mentioned to Commissioner Becerra, there was extensive outreach in 2019 when the original map was proposed. This being an extension, it's already an approved project. We're moving.
Yes. Yeah, totally understand that.
Yeah.
How many people, how many residents would this affect now, not in 2019 and 2023? How many residents does this directly affect?
There's not many that live within close proximity.
Within the 750-foot range.
I don't know what the noticing amount was, but obviously we've approved. I don't know, Michelle, if you wouldn't mind bringing up that the master plan map for Ranchera that I had sent. Yeah. All right, 1 second. Point at a picture might be. The other one. So just a little bit of history. Ranchera was originally approved in its current form in 2014. We did a fairly substantial amendment in 2018. At that, and then in kind of that time period, the first maps that were approved were villages 1, 2, and 3, which are these over here. We then did village 5 and village 6. So village 6 is a kind of smaller lot patio home. And then we did the estates residential 9 lots on the other side of Evans Creek, and then village 4 and the club cottages. So the club cottages are way down here on the very southern boundary of the ranch. The Rossers who live on Del Monte are very interested at that time. We worked very closely with them. So the notification boundary, I would anticipate, it obviously includes a lot of unincorporated county land to the south of us, and probably skirts up into village 5 and village 6, as well as obviously village 4 would be noticed as well.
Okay, and then what isn't built out right now? So I'm looking at Google Earth and the picture's a couple years old.
Sure.
So I don't have exactly what's built out. What is built out now?
Yep. So village 6, we did in 2 phases, 6A and 6B. So I think 6B, I think they're still building homes in 6A. 6B is still also under construction. Village 7 has not been proposed with anything yet. So that is actually, it's referred to in the handbook as urban residential. It's the highest density that was assumed in the handbook. Overall, Ranchera is allowed to have 722 homes. It's gone quite a bit less dense than what is approved. These lots over here are far larger than we could have done in the handbook. All told, depending on what Village 7 comes out as, it's probably in like the 500 range. So we'll be, probably 150 to 200 lots shy of the maximum. So all the improvements are based on the 722 lots that were originally approved in the master plan community. So the traffic studies and infrastructure, underground infrastructure, water, sewer, everything like that was based on the maximum. And it's looking like it's going to come in quite a bit under that.
Okay, and then last question. What is the area that's proposed for the extension tonight? What is that zoned as?
It is, in the handbook, it's zoned as event center. It is master planned in Reimagine Reno as suburban mixed use.
Okay.
Yep, so that's the master plan, that's not the zoning. The zoning, which is the PUD identified as event center, and it has a mix of uses. So it is allowed to have 1 dwelling unit per acre. So we're actually allowed to have 12 dwelling units in that area. We only proposed 8.
Okay, thank you. Nothing else.
Commissioner Villanueva, please.
Question for staff. Hi, Brooke. Does Reno Municipal Code require any specific findings for granting an extension of time?
There are no specific findings required for this extension of time.
Okay, and so when does the NRS make any requirements for us to consider?
What it does is it allows it to happen, and it requires a public hearing, right? So there's public notice, it goes through this process. But as far as a finding, a lot of those findings of the impacts of this development were went through that tentative map. And so there was an extensive review at that time of the allowability of these units, the density of these units and that. And so that is really when we saw the findings being made. Tonight really is a decision if that extension of that 2 years is appropriate.
And so have we seen any final, we've seen, what I heard from the applicants was we've seen final maps.
We have a final map that is, I think it's 17 units total. They final mapped everything except the remaining 8.
Okay, so I'm looking at NRS 278.360. It says if the subdivider is presenting in a timely manner a series of final maps, which I just understand that happened, each covering a portion of the approved tentative map, then no other requirements are imposed.
Correct.
So it truly is, there's really not much we can do. I mean, we have seen a series of tentative maps.
They have through their process, moved through this process diligently, and that, the majority of this has been final mapped. They held these 8 units out. They are now at this time. looking to extend that time to make sure they have the time to design and develop. And obviously, as we spoke, the market conditions are obviously one of the things they're looking at right now. But other than that, there really isn't. It's if it's deemed appropriate. The conditioning and everything has already been done on that.
Okay, Chair, may I ask a question of the applicant?
Of course, please.
What was anything here? Any of the maps provided? Was any of that recorded publicly with the clerk recorder at any point on deeds or?
The final map for Village 4, yes, was recorded. That's a recorded
Okay.
document.
And what about the other information? Was any of that available when?
This PUD is a
purchasing?
recorded document.
I'm
So
sorry?
the planned unit development is a recorded document, so that would show up on title for every sale.
Okay.
So this map is on there.
So when
The tentative map itself is not a recorded document, but the final maps are.
Okay. I guess what I'm trying to get at is if I were to be interested in purchasing a home in 2019, 2020, would I have been able to see that there was potential for development there?
I don't know. I don't know what was in the disclosure documents. They would typically disclose surrounding zoning. That's usually a requirement from Division of Real Estate. So this exhibit here would have been, I would anticipate, have been shown. I'm speaking a little bit from speculation because I don't know what all was included in closing documents, but there was a disclosure that's required for obviously approved projects that are in there.
Okay. Brooke, it looked like you were going to say something.
Just quickly, wanted to speak to the tenant map and our process. Once we go through that process, we go through a CELA system, which is a CELA 1, which is Sparks, Washoe County, and the city of Reno. So any of those applications are available through the public through that. It is an outward transparency facing of those documents. So that tentative map, that process, that approval, and the hearings and outcomes and all of that is available through that Acela 1 to the public. So that tentative map is not necessarily recorded through the county, but it is available online.
So if I wanted to conduct due diligence to see where I was purchasing my home and what could potentially be developed around me, I would have been able to find that information.
Yeah, obviously it's you knowing the cases and working through some of that, but yes, that is available.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Commissioner Romer, please, go ahead.
I have a question for staff. In looking at the aerial view, sort of eyeballing distance, I don't see 35 potential neighboring the minimum in the 750-foot radius. Can you explain to me the methodology and who might have received to try to reach that 35 noticing minimum?
Sure, they would have, if we do not, and what she's speaking to is that we require a minimum of 35 people to be noticed in that 750. So if that, or total. So if that is not met, we continue to expand that circle out until we hit that 35. So I don't know, it may have been over 750. I don't know the exact noticing radius at this time, but the required per RMC were noticed on this.
Would that be a subjective process, perhaps?
What they would probably do is take the project site and continue to expand a circle, so it would be, evenly distributed of how they would do that.
Okay, I just am noticing. I'm wondering if more commercial properties may have been noticed in this case?
They may have. We have the commercial center that sits just to the east of this site. The owners of that would have been notified. As Andy mentioned, we have a number of county residents and rural residents that are large lots, so it probably could have hit a number of those. And then as we are seeing some of that density increase, homes are being built. Some of them are not occupied at that time through that area, but then we have some of those larger lots too. And those, through the noticing, it may have noticed also some of those.
Thank you.
Good. Mike, did you want to comment?
For the record, Mike Riley, Planning Manager. Commissioner Romar, just to also clarify, the map that you're looking there at on the screen is the land use plan from the PD handbook, so that doesn't reflect any lots that have been recorded or houses that were built subsequently to that document being adopted.
Any further question from the commissioners? Commissioner Becerra, please.
Sure. My spidey sense is going off on this one. I understand that through Commissioner Villanueva's line of questioning, seems like things are fine, but I think it's how we do things. And in this case, the lack of engagement with the residents by your own admission since 2019. And I have concern that last night's NAB meeting was canceled for whatever reason. It could have just been for a number of reasons. I don't feel comfortable approving this myself without having given residents or the impacted community the opportunity to have the type of engagement that they rightfully deserve. My question to Brooke or Mr. Raley or Mr. Hall is, would it be appropriate, because I also don't want to stall something that is appropriate for development, but it's how we do things. Would it be appropriate to continue this matter prior to the November meeting in order for there to be a NAB meeting or further engagement with residents, or is that a moot point?
If you wanted to move to continue it, you could continue it.
Thanks, Mr. Hall.
Yeah, if I may, Commissioner Becerra, to your point, because what we're really deciding on is an extension. I guess I understand there may be some mishaps on communication about the item that was coming to our body tonight. It's really an extension of an approved project. So I'm not sure continuing it or even having more notice or more meeting would really change what I believe the public commenters are stating, which is they don't want the project to happen at all, but it's an approved project. So I understand that there's probably going to be more when it comes to the design and other, features of their, their build out over the coming years. They hopefully will, take heed of having more notice, being more open to what's coming in front of them. But for me tonight, I'm in support of the extension because that's really just what's in front of us now. Outside of maybe any, lack of communication, we're really just looking at extension.
Great, thanks, Chair. May I follow up with you on this one?
Please.
And perhaps to the rest of the commission. If we do not approve this extension, what happens?
Once again, Mike Raley for the record. If the extension was not approved, the map, I believe, is set to expire in November of this year. The applicant would then have to reapply for a tentative map for those lots.
Great, thank you. And actually, that underscores my point. Because while I understand your point, Chair, if we did not approve this, this would demand that the applicant go through the process and actually engage with its residents. And so whether we approve this tonight or not, it seems like there's been a bit of trust that's been compromised between the developer and its residents, current and prospect. So I would just underscore, if this moves forward tonight, that the applicant reevaluate how it's actually engaging with its residents, current and future. Would the applicant like to respond to that?
Andy Durling for the record. Commissioner, this was a project that was approved in 2019, right? Prior to many of these people even living in this neighborhood. So to relitigate it and go backwards and want to, because they've taken their statutorily allowed time to file final maps and to make them go back through a process because they've sold homes elsewhere in the development seems a little like we're going back in time, right? This has already been litigated. This project was already vetted by the Planning Commission in 2019, was found to be appropriate. It was found to be appropriate in the context of a master plan community, okay? And so obviously with new residents coming in, they've got concerns about other things that may or may not be related to this that come into play. So this seems like a relitigation of something that has been approved. And to Commissioner Draculich's point, right, this is an extension of time. This is not looking, as Commissioner Villanueva said, looking back through the findings to reanalyze this. It's been analyzed, it's been approved. We're looking for a couple more years in order to finish the last 8 lots.
Okay, then thank you for that. My follow-up question, if you'd like to stay for a second, please, is what's going to change in the methodology with how y'all engage with residents for how things are going to move forward?
Put my historian hat back on. I've been involved with Ranchera since 2011. In 2011, I worked for John Hara to do the first kind of ideas associated with it. Really included more commercial uses at that time and not the residential. In 2014, he looked to sell the entire ranch. In 2014, when we did this original master plan community, we had more outreach than I have ever done on any land development project in my career. We hosted multiple meetings at the ranch with hundreds of people and took them on driving tours of the entire ranch to show them what was coming. Looking forward, we've been trying to just implement that vision. We've been trying to implement the things that we're allowed to do in that handbook that we have been very explicit about over the years. So to continue to reach out and say, hey, is this still good? It's been deemed good. It's been deemed something that it's approved handbook that we've been moving forward with. So I'm struggling a little bit because it's kind of something that we've been sort of marching through the process to ultimately. We had a vision in the plan unit development that shown on the screen. We go through the tentative map process, which then further specifies what we're doing, and then ultimately the final map process is an administrative process that is the legal recording of the lots. So what we're looking for is just another 2 years to legally record those lots.
Thank you. And all I'm asking for, I don't want to be a thorn on this.
No,
because we're here to represent the wider community and the folks in this chambers, is that I just want to make sure that moving forward as life happens, because life happened a couple of years ago with the pandemic.
Sure.
Impacted the conditions of the market, is how are y'all going to pivot to effectively communicate those changes when life happens to current and prospective residents?
Sure. And totally respect that. And like I said, what I wanted to kind of provide the history is that this applicant has not been shy with engaging the public at large on this project in particular. At this time, what we're looking at is a fairly narrow scope of what is being asked for tonight, right? It's an extension of time for 2 years. It's not relitigating the project. It's not looking back through the findings of the project. That was already dealt with. That was approved in 2019, and we're looking to get another 2 years because, as you mentioned, right, we've had a pandemic, we've had significant rate increases in that has affected the housing market. I mean, these things are not anticipated, right? It wasn't in any of our crystal balls when I got this approved in 2019. So, respectfully requesting the additional 2 years.
Thank you, and thank you, Chair.
Of course. No, we always want to hear your voice, Commissioner. I appreciate your conversation. Any more discussion? Oh, Commissioner Villanueva, please.
So generally speaking, I think it is appropriate to extend, but I mean, if we're all that Commissioner Becerra is asking for is a continuance, is that going to be a problem? Just to allow for some communication.
I think one of the challenges that we face is that this expires November 16th. And so that continuance really starts to put a crunch on the time frame moving forward as we move to the next meeting. So I believe that's one of the challenge of continuing that, but that is at the option of this commission.
Commissioner Munoz? No.
Thank you. Maybe this will be for you, Andy. Why was the NAB only scheduled for the day before this hearing?
I don't know. We don't have any.
I mean, why did you get on? Was this scheduled to be heard last night?
I believe it was. Okay. I think we received a notice, but then we received quickly a notice of cancellation.
Okay. My concern is, why was this only put on the schedule for the NAB last night, the day before we're supposed to be heard here, when you knew or Wood Rogers knew that this 2 year was coming up?
Sure.
Instead of waiting till last. Now I feel like we're kind of up against a wall.
No, understood. And I don't know. I mean, we don't make obviously the schedules, so we submitted in September and we're put on this agenda. So it's No, I don't know why that scheduling was.
Commissioner, I can speak to that once again, Mike Rayleigh. Andy is correct. The applicant does not have control over the NAB schedule. That is set by the NABs themselves. Just so happened that that's where the meeting fell in the cycle, and we have a statutory requirement to bring this request forward within a certain time frame. Unfortunately, it's my understanding due to a lack of quorum, that meeting was canceled last night. So it's just kind of by chance that that's how it fell.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Rohrmeyer?
Yes, Commissioner Rohrmeyer, I have some, general thoughts for discussion. I find that, a time extension is largely a perfunctory task. It's just an extension, as this was, I think, thoroughly discussed. This was a project stemming from 2019. The decision has been made. I feel strongly that this is an exemplary development for Reno. It's in the urban core, and that duet homes and density in this area are the right fit for this location. I also feel that the applicant calling the use event center and including residential housing in a PUD was not clear for those who might receive disclosures or at the time of signing on a property. So I would support the time extension because this has been approved and it is an exemplary project for Reno. I feel if we don't give the extension, this will be very rushed to get the mapping done, and that maybe with an extension, there's an opportunity for better communication between the developer and the residents.
And my general thought too, just Commissioner Villanueva, Commissioner Becerra, appreciate all your comments, really do. I think a continuance, I don't know what that would really change. They'd still be coming here requesting a time extension. I'm not sure what public input might provide if they, if they were at a different stage of things, they'd have a lot more ability to take on public comment and listen to their neighbors and make different choices. But we're really just asking for an extension on approved projects. So I'm not sure that really does anything even if we got that. So I would be in support of this extension and agree with all the thoughts of Commissioner Rohrmeyer. Commissioner Armstrong?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I do understand some of the communication issues and maybe the misunderstanding, but ultimately, this was a project that was approved in 2019. I don't see anything that we can do by virtue of a continuation that changes that, other than kind of going back on a decision that the Planning Commission had made and kind of creating more hurdles. I don't see how that's really beneficial. I agree with Commissioner Rohrmeyer that it's an exemplary development, and that at least for the continuation, there's some opportunity to sort it out, maybe change some of the communication going forward. But it is a perfunctory element, and I wouldn't support a continuation.
Okay, seems we've had our discussion. We will entertain a motion. Or
Actually, we're
Commissioner
still in
Mears, please.
discussion. I didn't know we jumped into discussion.
Yeah, you're fine.
So yeah,
Pleasure.
I'm in discussion mode right now.
Please.
This is going to be for, I guess, Brooke, which is going to lead into discussion for me. This is just a real
Please,
quick
you're
question.
fine.
Why does the city set these 2-year windows that they have to get stuff done?
So this is actually not set by the city. This is set by the state of Nevada. So
Okay.
this is NRS, and Nevada revised statute sets these timelines. So we reflect those in our approvals. So once it's approved, we set that it defers to NRS, which is 4 years. NRS then goes on further say, once you've done that initial final map, that kind of takes off your ticker, right? You've got to get the next one now within 2 years. Well, they submitted prior to that, so now they're kind of up. They've shortened their time period, but to your question, City of Reno does not set those timelines. Those are set by the state.
Okay, why, and I don't know if you can answer this, why does this state set limits? What is the reason behind the limits?
I think it's to look so you don't have tentative maps sitting out there for 20 years, right? And so they are looking at a specific timeline. I think I'm sure they've taken in a lot of input that they're looking in. What does it take to develop, design a project, move forward? What's appropriate to that once you do have an approval to get those final maps? Because that final map's really the time when you can go and build, right? That tentative map. So we don't want tentative maps sitting out there for 10 years. And to have them be 18 months, that's very challenging when you're building a larger project to get a final map in. So the state has settled on 4 years, and we feel that's appropriate.
Perfect, thank you. And that's going to lead me into my discussion
Please
point.
do.
And he said exactly what I was expecting him to say is what it's appropriate. And the reason they set these time limits is if something no longer becomes appropriate, I believe that is our job to give this extension or not. So I understand the argument and the discussion that something was already litigated, something was already discussed, something was already be passed. But I believe it is our job as the Planning Commission to come back and look if something is still appropriate. And if it's not appropriate anymore for this area, it is our duty to make sure that we do not approve a time extension. Now, I'm not arguing for or against this extension at this point, but I am trying to make the point that it is our job, it is our duty to make sure that we approve something appropriate for the area. And if it is no longer appropriate from what was done 4 years ago or 2019, it is our duty to not approve that time extension. So I'd like to hear what you think about that. And also I want to throw in there, I don't believe Wood Rogers, I don't believe the developers were hiding anything from anybody. I don't believe it was purposeful. But does this fall under the guise of a buyer beware? They should have looked into it, they should have checked. I'd like to know what the commission's feelings are on those two items. Thank you.
Sure, and I'll go to you in a second, Commissioner Villanueva. So as a realtor, usually we're given disclosures about adjacency to future developments. That can be tough. If you're on the very north end of this project, they may not consider the very south end of that a future development adjacent to their property. But usually there is some form of disclosure happening within that transaction that can vary from agent to agent, broker to broker. So I can't speak to that, but usually that is a conversation, and I would hope when buying a property with your realtor, if that's what you used, or the sales office, that they would be able to discuss what's on the horizon or something that has been approved at minimum. So just wanted to answer that directly, but I'll let Commissioner Villanueva chime in.
I just want to, first I want to say thank you for contributing. That's very thoughtful contribution to the discussion. And I like that you pointed that out because I mean, there's very valid points that you made, very valid points. I think at this point though, this is our first extension. It's the first extension.
So the way that state law works is there is one extension. So they're not previous extensions, they get one, and that's a 2-year extension as allowed by state law.
Okay. Sorry, since he's here, can I ask a question?
You sure
Brooke,
can.
since I have you up here, great. That's actually helpful as well. So what would happen, say we do grant this and in 2 years they come back and the project's still not done, what happens at that point?
There's no further extensions at that point. They will have to have submitted a final map to move forward with these lots.
Okay, okay, that's helpful. Mainly, I just want to say thank you. I appreciate you engaging in the conversation. That was really thoughtful. My position stands though.
Commissioner Armstrong, go ahead.
Thanks, Arthur. I agree. I think that is a really thoughtful point. I guess my concern is there's kind of a slippery slope element to it because they are allowed one and only one extension, which we're here to consider. It was litigated 4 years ago. I don't know how much maybe the standards of approval or conformance to the master plan, et cetera, would have changed within that 4 years. So I have a hard time looking at it and saying, well, maybe now it's inappropriate, if that makes sense. Like, I think it's a good point, but for me, it's a bit vague.
Commissioner, which one of you wants to talk? You look both like you want to. Commissioner Rohrmeyer, go ahead.
Commissioner Rohrmeyer, I'll be quick. I really appreciate the feedback and comments of my fellow commissioners. Given that there's less units than was originally intended in the PUD, I sense that if this expired, we would be seeing a tentative map, which could potentially bring 12 units to this location, and I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. So it might be worth considering that 8 have been approved already.
Commissioner Becerra, go
Sure.
ahead.
One last thing. Going to build upon Commissioner Muniz' point about what is appropriate, what's not. It's hard for me to sometimes determine that when there is no public input. We've already stressed that point, and I think that's just the missing piece for me. But I think it could be remedied as well. Mr. Durling, would you be able to make a commitment to rectify that communication issue, and how would that look like? If you cannot make a commitment, I'll be frank that I'm a no.
I guess I'm confused. Commitment on going forward on projects within Ranchera in general, or?
Well, particularly with, I guess I'll stay within scope of this particular project before us. By your own admission, you mentioned that the last outreach was really in 2019. And it seems like a long time ago to stop doing that. It almost seems like you're taking folks for granted, not you, but the project. And I'd just like to know if you'd be able to make a commitment on behalf of the wider project to rectify that communication issue.
Yeah, as far as, I mean, I obviously can speak on behalf of Wood Rogers as a consultant, right, for the project. We take public input very seriously. We do public outreach professionally on a number of projects, both for private clients as well as public agencies. So from us, yes, we are absolutely committed to public outreach. For this project, I know the applicant has regular meetings at the club, does different engagement in small groups and larger meetings and things like that. I'm not involved in any of those, so it's hard for me to kind of speak specifically to that. But I know that they are doing those meetings on a somewhat regular basis. And so moving forward, we have very few projects left for the build out of this. And yes, we would commit that we would be definitely engaging the community on any of the future projects for sure.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Early.
Yeah.
Chair.
Okay. Commissioner Armstrong.
So one question maybe for Brooke or Mike. Is there any point in this project that communication wasn't made in the appropriate format? Like, was there any point along the way of these approvals or the tentative map, scheduling NABs, things like that? Because I have a hard time, I guess, with this argument that there wasn't good communication. Like, I want to be very clear, like, were there any issues with communication, like, in terms of what's required by the statute and what we're here to observe? And if so, were they rectified? Like, can you clear that up for me a little bit?
So an extension of time is a little unique versus a true like a development project, right? So when we went through the first tentative map, we went to NABs. We had, there was outreach, there was noticing, there was a larger process. So a lot of, as the applicant's representative mentioned, that a lot of that was done at that period of time. Now, obviously, the community has changes and there's new input and information. But on an extension, it's usually really more of I would consider a minor hearing than we would see the original approval being really the major hearing on this. They did everything from the noticing to scheduling for the NAB and trying to participate in all those things that we ask or are required by RMC. So I see no shortcoming on the applicant's part of trying to engage or be through our process.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I will entertain a motion. Commissioner Armstrong.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Armstrong, I'll motion in the case of LDC 24-0012, I'm reading this wrong. Yeah, I have the case number right. It's just different in the tentative map. So sorry, case LDC 24-00012. Tentative map to allow for a 2-year time extension of a previously approved residential tentative map subdivision. LDC 19-00065, Ranchera Village 4, based upon compliance with NRS 278.360, requirements for presentation of final map or series of final maps, extensions of time. I move to approve a 2-year time extension on the Ranchera PUD Village 4 tentative map, subject to original conditions of approval.
Okay, we have a motion.
Commissioner Romero, second.
We have a motion and a second. We can move into discussion one more time. Please do. Commissioner Munoz.
Thank you, Commissioner Munoz. If this is granted, I believe this will be for the city. The presentation of final map comes to us next, and at that time, public notice needs to be made.
No, at this point, this will be the last public hearing point of time. Once the final map comes, that's done administratively. And so that's the process that we review sewer, traffic, hydrology, the whole point of map, to the point that we are comfortable to send that final platted map that establishes those lots with the county. So this will be the final public hearing.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Michelle, roll call vote, please.
Draculich,
Yes.
Armstrong,
Yes.
Becerra,
Nay.
Munoz,
Nay.
Romeyer,
Yes.
Villanueva.
Yes.
It's 4-2, the motion passes.
All right, thank you. Good luck with your project. Thank you. Okay, we are going to take a short 5-minute bathroom break.
Cookie break.
Michelle, oh, you what? No, you're good. I'm just making sure she's good. But you can keep it. I think my mic is off. I know what you're trying to do. Now, and we will move to item 5.3, case number LDC 24-00008, Dottie's. And are we going to get a presentation from the applicant? Oh, thank you.
We have Jeff. Let's see. Jeff, can you hear us?
Yes, I'm able to hear you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Planning Commissioners. My name is Jeff Donato with Argentum, representing the property owner who is the applicant on this application. And there with you this evening in chambers is Mr. Sev Carlson, who represents the tenant. And if we can go to the PowerPoint, let's see here.
Hang on just a second. Okay, are you sharing your screen? Okay, Jeff, are you there? Oh, there. You doing it?
Are you able to hear me now?
Yeah.
And are you able to see my screen?
No, we couldn't see your screen. We're going to share it. Oh.
Okay, thank you.
Oh,
Appreciate it.
yeah, we've got it. We see it. We see it now.
Okay.
Could you just make it a little bit bigger?
Yes.
Please. Put it.
On my side, it's as big as it. Oh, sorry.
Put it in slideshow mode, if you could. Start it from the beginning. Yeah.
Is that good?
Yep.
Okay. So the project is located within the Airport Square Shopping Center, which is generally located on the south side of East Plum Lane and between Harvard Way and Interstate 580. The physical address within the shopping center is 1296 East Plum Lane, Suites I through K, which is right here in this section. The property is zoned general commercial, and the master plan is suburban mixed use. The overall parcel is approximately 17.24 acres with ingress and egress along East Plum Lane and also Harvard Way. There is sufficient parking within the center. There's shared parking, which has approximately 968 shared parking spaces. And there's also 32 accessible spaces and also bicycle spaces as well. Some of the tenants within this shopping center, existing tenants within this shopping center is Costco, More Furniture for Less, Urban Air, the Sleep Train, One Nevada Federal Credit Union. There's also various restaurants and retail establishments as well. The proposed use is for a bar and tavern, or bar slash tavern, which being in a general commercial zoning district requires a conditional use permit, and that's why we are here before you today, seeking the approval of that use permit. In addition, it will be restricted gaming, 15 machines, which is permitted as an accessory to the bar and tavern use under RMC. In addition to that, the packaged alcohol is also deemed an accessory use to the bar tavern use and within the GC zoning district. And then also that we have the restaurant use, which is permitted in the GC zoning district. The overall total square footage of the space is approximately 4,109 square feet. There will be no one under the age of 21 allowed on premise. There'll be a total of approximately 28 dining seats. And as I mentioned before, 15 machines, which are all embedded into the bar top as required by RMC. The hours of operation would be 24/7. And then lastly, we just have a conceptual elevation plan. It is conceptual, but we did want to show that as well. With that, staff is recommending approval of this application subject to conditions. We have reviewed and accept those conditions and would respectfully request this application to be approved. With that, we're here to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are we going to get a presentation from, okay, great. Thanks, Jeff.
We on? Good, okay. Jeff Foster, Associate Planner for the record. LDC 24-00008 for Dottie's is what we have tonight. So the applicant did a great job of going through some of the basics. I'm not going to belabor the point on the site size, the location. I think probably everyone is familiar with the location. The Airport Square Shopping Center, the request for the conditional use permit is specifically to allow the use, a bar, lounge, or tavern in the general commercial zoning district and the 24-hour operations between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. The key issues are compatibility with surrounding uses and operational impacts. The red arrow does point to the location within the center where the vacant suites are located. The zoning district, as the applicant indicated, is general commercial, and the master plan is suburban mixed use. Here are some policies that the application is in line with. The components for the application for Dottie's, and even though it is Dottie's, what we're analyzing is a bar, lounge, or tavern use. It's an approximately 4,106 square foot bar and tavern use with restricted gaming, meaning up to 15 slot machines. The restaurant use is secondary. A bar or tavern also has food service, so this really is not a restaurant, even though it shows dining and food service is available, but it is truly a bar or tavern use. Proposed security and surveillance provided by Nevada Restaurant Services, Inc. And NRSI installs a minimum of 28 interior and exterior cameras in any Dottie's location. In terms of compatibility with surrounding uses, there is a Dottie's nearby on Plum Lane at 1100 East Plum Lane. The ownership for that Dottie's will be the same as the proposed Dottie's location. That location was previously a Sneakers Bar and Grill that was entitled prior to Dottie's taking it over. So that, and the picture is of that Dottie's location at 1100 East Plum Lane. In addition to that location, there are 3 restaurants with alcohol service in the Costco shopping center, and the uses that are in the center are typical of shopping centers in the area. Wooster High School is immediately across Plum Lane to the north, and Plum Lane is a major arterial, providing a substantial amount of separation. Also, it's worth noting that the closest residential uses are approximately 1,300 feet to the northwest and 1,100 feet to the southwest. Where that comes into play is in terms of the operational impacts. Staff does not anticipate any impact to existing residents, 1,300 and 1,100 feet away because of those proposed 24-hour operations, and that would be because of the nature of the use being an interior use within the building, the distance to the use, and the nature of that use. RPD and code enforcement specifically provided comment, which is to say they had no comment. There was no concerns about the proposed use in that location. And code enforcement did indicate that the applicant has ample security and that they do not have any issues with other Dottie's locations in the area. I should have mentioned earlier that there are approximately 15 Dottie's locations in the greater Reno-Sparks area. Here are the recommended findings for the conditional use permit. Staff can make all the findings, and here is the recommended motion, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it.
You bet.
All right, we'll go to the commissioners for disclosures. Commissioner Rohrmeyer, please.
Commissioner Rohrmeyer, I'm familiar with the site.
Commissioner Becerra, same disclosure.
Commissioner Armstrong, I'm familiar with the site.
Commissioner Moon, same disclosures.
Commissioner Villanueva visited the site, familiar with the site.
Commissioner Draculich, familiar with the site and also spoke to an associate of the applicant. All right, Michelle, do we have any requests to speak forms?
I did not receive any requests to speak forms, no voicemails, and no correspondence received.
Okay, thank you. Anybody in the chambers wish to speak on this item? Seeing none, we will close comment and move it to the commissioners for questions of the applicant or staff. Commissioner Villanueva.
Thanks. Question for staff. Hi, good evening. What is the separation requirement, distance separation requirement for the school and the, because I think there's one right across the street, right? Or down the street?
Yes, Jeff Foster, Associate Planner for the record. Yeah, Wooster High School is right across Plum Lane.
So what's the distance requirement in the development code, and what is this distance requirement?
Distance requirement separating what? The school from what?
From the tavern, yeah. Is there one in code?
There is no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. And I think I had one more. Oh, there was a comment that we received regarding concern with overnight parking, people sleeping in campers, vans, things like that. So I understand that there's some security cameras. How's the applicant addressing that? And if you'd like him or her to respond, that's fine as well.
First of all, I would point out that I did not see that comment, so I'm not aware of the comment. Regardless, overnight parking is not allowed, per code. So that would become potentially a code enforcement issue if it is something that has been happening or would happen as a result of in terms of people camping in the parking lot. But in terms of the use, if it's a 24-hour use, ostensibly you could have people there overnight. But if you're talking about actual camping in the parking lot, that would be a code enforcement issue.
So yeah, I understand that. I think the concern was with, I can read the comment to you. They're requesting that there be ample security. wait, where was it? Oh, here it is. Overgrowth behind the building can contribute to unwanted campers and people utilizing the business as a concealment. So I think they're concerned that because the business is open from 11 to 6, that the idea is that they're going to camp there right by the business, giving the impression that they're actually patrons of the business.
Okay.
So I'm just asking what the response to that is.
From a code perspective, it
like
would
the
be code
applicant's right
enforcement.
behind
But
you.
if the applicant would like to speak to that, absolutely.
Well, let me put it this way. Sev Carlson, for the record, I'm outside counsel to Nevada Restaurant Services doing business as Dottie's. Dottie's is not the applicant, the landlord is. I read this and I'll let Jeff answer it. I understand that comment to be an Airport Square shopping center comment as to the section of the building east of where Dottie's proposes to be located. And there's an old, I think, drive-through for the credit union there. And so I think that's more of a comment as to the landlord's responsibilities. I think the landlord is ready, willing, and able to address that. It isn't a Dottie's customer or a Dottie's business concern. Obviously, if we have 28 cameras indoors and outdoors, we're happy to report that to RPD as a gaming licensee if it becomes needed. But I think that's a landlord question. So I just wanted to make sure for the record, it's not I don't think it's a Dottie's specific concern.
This is Jeff Donato on behalf of the applicant and property owner. So during this process, RPD did indicate there was some vegetation where they were concerned that people may start camping in there. And when the landlord did learn of that, they took the necessary steps to trim, to prune, and to make sure that it's not an inviting place for people to camp. And the landlord is committed to doing what's necessary to ensure that doesn't happen. And as far as people camping on the property, this is the first that I'm hearing about it, but I can definitely bring it to my client's attention and make sure that they understand that that was a concern that was addressed here, and to make sure that they're aware of it and take the necessary steps to make sure that's not happening.
May I chime back in on that? Okay, so if you're referring to the RPD comment, I'm sorry, I took it as a public
I
comment.
didn't know who it was from.
Yeah,
so-
it's from Tyler Burrow, Officer Burrow
Yeah,
from RPD.
okay.
And so, yeah, he was talking about, as Seb talked about, on the backside of the building, people camping, quote unquote, encampments in the overgrown vegetation. And I did forward that to the applicant. And as Jeff Donato indicated, the center is responsible for that, not the applicant in this case.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions.
And if I may jump in, I just Google mapped it. I can see what they're discussing now. It makes more sense if you get a chance to look. So thank you for clarification. Commissioner Becerra.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Foster, perhaps for you, really just points of clarification.
Sure.
Since the landlord's the applicant, is it correct to say that if one day Dottie's goes, they decide to move down the street, this permit stays and bullies can move in, for instance, and leverage that 24/7 permit?
So those suites, the specific suites there, and I think it's condition number 5, limits the entitlement, the conditional use permit entitlement for a bar, lounge, or tavern and 24-hour operations to literally those 2 suites only.
Okay.
Yep.
Great. Thanks, Mr. Foster. And one more. Where or how does community neighbor input weigh in on this type of application? It's not residential necessarily next door, but there's various restaurants, businesses, LDS bookstore. I'm just curious how that weighs in, if at all.
So there were no comments received from the public or from the NAB on this. So if we were to have received comments, certainly we would have factored them into the analysis, but there were no comments received.
Okie dokie. Thank you.
You bet.
Seeing no more questions, move to discussion or a motion.
Commissioner Munoz, I'm ready to make a motion.
All right, thank you.
The case number LDC 24-00008 Dottie's. Based on compliance with the applicable findings, I move to approve the conditional use permit subject to the conditions listed in the staff report, and I can make the findings.
I have a motion.
Commissioner Armstrong, I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. Congrats. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd just like to take a moment to say I appreciate staff's hard work on this application, in particular Jeff. He was great to work with, and it was a pleasure, and we appreciate the approval.
Thank you as well, and good luck.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to item 5.4, LDC 2400007, Notable Music Therapy Services, SPD. Looks like we'll get a presentation from the applicant. Please, thank you. Feel free to state your name and go right ahead.
Great, thank you. My name is Sarah Toney. I am here representing Notable Music Therapy Services. I've worked with Notables on and off for the last 10 years as a fundraiser, primarily. So, next slide, please.
You can control it
Can I?
At the podium there, yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so I don't know if you guys are familiar with Notable Music Therapy Services. A lot of people know the band called the Notables. This is a group of adults with disabilities or people of all abilities who go around, and we perform around 50 gigs a year. So you might have seen them all over the place. But this last fiscal year, we served 2,500 people, and we recently moved to 2590 Oravada Drive. We used to be at McKinley Arts, the city building just down the way. And we ran out of space when we were unable to grow, and so we moved. And we moved into this new to us, quite old building. It's about 50 years old. It used to be the old AT&T call center. It's 17,000 square feet. And so our programs have moved into this space over here. It's been just in September fully renovated. And this space over here will be renting out these 3 offices to other nonprofits. So the Reno Jazz Orchestra, and we're still working out who else will be moving in to these spaces, because we just don't need this yet. And then here is the space in question. And this is around 1,000 square foot commercial kitchen. And we're hoping to rent that out to somebody who needs it. We're a music-based organization. We do adaptive music and music therapy. We don't need to feed 900 children, or I think it was 900 meals a day. This used to be the Montessori school, and they would serve breakfast and lunch to like 300-400 kids. That doesn't happen anymore. So this is what we're asking for today, is that even though our zoning is public facilities, we would like to be able to rent out this space to a food service organization, restaurant. We don't want any retail sales out of this space, but like a food truck or a bakery, a caterer, or something like that. And when we originally tried to rent out this space, we discovered really quickly that we were not allowed to do that. And so that's why we're here. So this is our space right now. We're right on the city line. And these are the surrounding land uses, or the zoning: general, commercial, professional offices, public facilities. So these are also schools. High Desert Montessori moved right across the way over here. This is Rita Canaan Elementary. And then this is actually Reno Housing, senior low-income housing here. And then there's a new senior low-income housing moving in here. So it's a really great place for us to be as an organization who works with people with disabilities and generally lower income. And then this is from the master plan. So you can see us right here, this little purple. And so we're still in the master plan, public facility or quasi-public, but we'll be surrounded by suburban mixed use. So part of our application was to go through the benefits of this. We are a nonprofit, and so leasing out this kitchen, it would be around $2,500 to $3,000 a month in revenue, which would go a long way towards supporting the families who we serve. We also, as an organization, we do a lot of performance-based stuff, so we have multiple community events per year, which often involves food, so it wouldn't hurt our feelings at all if there was a caterer in that space who could also help. We could, support them. They could help us. Just and having food coming out of that kitchen would really be supportive. And also, some of the people we've talked to about this have talked about whether or not they would actually do some cooking classes or in some way engage and support the people with disabilities who we serve on our site. And I'm sure, well, I don't know, but I'm guessing you've been told that there's not enough kitchens in this town for the number of food entrepreneurs. So the kitchen is fully stocked with refrigerators and freezers. We bought the place with a functioning dishwasher. We've got the grease trap. We've got all the things. What we don't have is an ability to have somebody get to work, and that's it. So I think this would be a great benefit to the business community as well. Just to go through this really quickly, either we are in compliance or we have had no impact because there's no retail. We're not selling anything there. We're not serving food there. We don't see any traffic or safety concerns showing up. And we really do feel like this is going to be a benefit for the community and for the business community, but also for the community in which we serve, which is primarily folks with disabilities, seniors, people with mental health disorders. So that's it. I open up to questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. We'll get a presentation from staff. Leah, good to see you.
Hi.
Been a minute.
It's been a while.
I know. I noticed.
Alrighty. Well, good evening, members of the commission. For the record, my name is now Leah Picotti, no longer Leah Brock, associate planner with the City of Reno Development Services. And this evening, I'm following up on Sarah's presentation for Notable Music Therapy Services Specific Plan District. So here you can see where the site is located. It is a 3-acre site, and it is on the south side of Orovada Street, approximately 290 feet from the intersection with Silverado Boulevard. To give you a little bit of background, and I know that Sarah touched on this a bit, but the site was originally developed as an AT&T office building in 1973. And then in 2005, High Desert Montessori acquired the property, and the city council converted the master plan land use designation to public facility at that time. And the zoning district went from professional office to PF to allow for that primary school to be developed in that area. As Sarah stated, High Desert Montessori outgrew that location, and they moved to that other location that's just to the west of where Notables is now located. And Notables has now been operating out of that property for about 2 years. So today's request is for a zoning map amendment from public facilities to specific plan district. The key issues that we analyzed in this request were compatibility of the proposed zoning and the development standards with the surrounding land uses and conformance with the master plan. So first, I'll just talk a little bit about conformance with that master planned land use designation of suburban mixed use. You can see on the screen there the conforming base zoning districts, and it's limited in that, it's public, quasi-public land use designation. And you can see that those conforming base districts are limited. You basically have mixed use airport, public facilities, parks, greenways, and open space, or you can do a PUD or an SPD. So when Notables first came to us and said, we want to allow this commercial kitchen, potential catering, food truck, something like that, we said, well, your options are kind of limited under the master plan land use designation. And without a master plan change, you really only have a choice of going to an SPD. So they said, okay, let's do that. So I want to be very clear here that the underlying uses are retaining PF. So all of the development standards are still PF. None of that is changing. The only thing that's changing is that we are allowing 2 extra uses, and that's commercial kitchen and food processing or wholesale bakery. Both of these would allow for the preparation of the food on site, but it needs to be moved off site for consumption. So it's not that like they can open a restaurant in this site or they could open a bakery and have retail sales. So I just want to be very clear that retail sales would not be allowed in this location. And we have specified that in the SPD handbook as well. Here you can see the SPD findings. Staff did review all of these and finds that it is in conformance with the findings. I'm going to back up to the allowed uses because I just want to talk about something for a second right here. So, like I said, the potential uses could include food truck or a catering service, and no retail is permitted. The standards in the handbook are specific and do provide assurances that future use and or renovations or potential redevelopment of the site would be in a near identical form to what has existed on the property now because of those PF standards. This handbook does provide for little flexibility in design and development standards, and essentially the property is going to function no different than it has. Looking at the potential impacts to the area, because we do have 2 adjacent schools and we know that traffic can be an issue when there are schools. The traffic impacts were analyzed in 2005 when High Desert Montessori came in and the site was developed as a school. The current and proposed uses with notables operating on the site, potentially offices, food truck, or a catering service, are much less impactful from a traffic standpoint than what was originally analyzed for the school in 2005. And for that reason, this request to change the zoning to an SPD did not trigger any requirements for like a traffic impact analysis or anything like that. Now, if coming forward, something changes on the property, it's being redeveloped, it's going to have extra uses. There are several things within Reno Municipal Code that could change on that site that would then require that traffic impact. So I just want to make sure that we understand that should a proposed use come forward that exceeds what was established by those development standards in 2005 or triggers anything like over 200 trips per peak hours or things like that, they will have to come forward with a traffic impact analysis. I just want to be clear about that. So here again are the findings. Staff did review these and was able to make all the findings. Staff does recommend that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the zoning map amendment to the City Council, and the recommended motion is on the board, and I am available for any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leah, and congratulations.
Thank you very much.
We will move it to the commissioners for disclosures. Commissioner Villanueva, please.
Commissioner Villanueva, I visited the site.
Commissioner Munoz, I'm familiar with the site.
Commissioner Armstrong, familiar with the site?
Commissioner Becerra, I'm familiar with the site.
Commissioner Rohrmeyer, no disclosures.
Commissioner Draculich, no disclosures. All right. Michelle, we have any requests to speak forms, Zoomers, voicemails?
I did not receive any requests to speak forms, no voicemails, no correspondence, and no one on Zoom.
Great. Anybody in chambers wish to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll close public comment on this item and move it to the commissioners for questions of staff or the applicant. Commissioner Armstrong.
This one's for staff. Thanks, Leah, and congratulations. So this one's pretty straightforward. I just kind of want to make sure I understand. So when it was the Montessori school and they had the commercial kitchen, it didn't trigger any issues because they were just serving the children that attended the school, so there wasn't any commercial application to it. But because of what's being proposed here, that would trigger this SCP requirement.
Exactly. So
Okay.
it was considered an accessory use to a school prior, and they are allowed to feed on site. Now, if notables decided that they wanted to do something similar like that, where they wanted to feed everybody on site and it was only being used for that, it would then be considered an accessory for them. But because it's coming in as a separate business, that's what's triggering it.
Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure I understood. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Commissioner Villanueva, please.
Thank you. First, I want to say seems like a great program, great organization. I do have questions regarding the wholesale component. So, and I'll just come out and say what my concern is. It's mainly trucks, semis, big rigs, things like that. So I drove around the area. It's pretty residential, as you indicated earlier, schools. So I'd hate to see a bunch of semis coming in there for wholesale distribution of commercial products, baked goods, whatever it is. So what's the situation there? What are we looking at for that? Is that going to be something that is possible? Or can we see a condition put in?
We can't condition it because it's a zoning change. But I think at this point, we're only looking at 1,000 square foot kitchen. It's not huge. So if somebody were to come in wholesale and do a bakery, they would be limited to that 1,000 square feet that they're at now. I can't imagine that that would require semis coming in and out. Now, if they chose to expand that kitchen and they were going to make that commercial kitchen larger, they were going to put an addition on, anything like that would then trigger, like I said, a more thorough review of the potential traffic impacts, and it would be reviewed at that time. But again, this is only 1,000 square foot kitchen.
Okay. Give me a visual. What's 1,000 square foot? Because I didn't go in. So what would you say? I mean, how would you describe that? I'm just trying to picture what a.
Do you want to explain about what that kitchen looks like?
Yeah, so the equipment that's in there, like there's let's see, I don't know about a visual, but basically there's one fairly small dishwasher that you would see kind of at, if you're going to a restaurant or a bar where you can see, like they put in one tray for glasses or something. I mean, that's the size of the dishwasher, is one small tray at a time. There's one cooktop. There's no ovens. So somebody would have to bring in an oven. The only oven that would fit is one double stack. So there's really not much capacity. A bakery that might produce enough food to require trucks of any kind they would need to take up basically, like those rotator kinds with like big oven doors and all of that stuff. There's really no room for that. And then the way that the kitchen is set up, I don't know if it's worth bringing my image back up, but it's actually cut in half. So half of the kitchen is a dry prep area, and then the other half has like the actual equipment in it.
So what are you thinking as far as, the wholesale component? I'm just trying to think of like.
Well, so who we're talking to right now is someone who.
And you don't have to share a name or anything.
I won't, because it might not come through. But she's an event planner, and she does like children's birthdays.
Okay.
So she would be making thank you. So she would be making cakes for parties to order, or like cake pops for corporate parties. So here's the half of and it's the smaller half. So this is the half of the kitchen where like, here's the cooktop, here's where an oven could go. And then the dishwasher is in this corner. The refrigeration is along this wall. So it's all, and then this is like the prep table. Okay. So to give you a sense of scale, this is like maybe 10-foot stainless steel prep table here. Okay. And then this is the dry prep area. So it'd be, and she's planning on using this primarily for, if she ends up renting it, is primarily for storage.
Okay. I mean, no further questions. I think that answer, that gets to the heart of my concerns. And Leah, to your point earlier, you stated that because once we give the entitlement for wholesale, that would be permitted, but in this case, you said if they expand or attempt to expand to take up the whole building, there would be, what would be that process? What would that process look like? They would have to come back in front of us or this council?
Potentially. It depends on what that would actually look like, but at the very least, it would require it to go through building permit, fire permit, and business license review, where we would catch it at that time. And it would be analyzed at that time by not just planning, but also by the engineers to determine if it triggers any of those requirements. I think one of the things I was just thinking about is that there's no loading docks or anything like that at this site. So any sort of distribution would be limited to car traffic.
Okay. All right. Thank you. No further questions.
Good. Commissioner Becerra.
Howdy. I just want to say this is genius. I love it. I think it's the type of entrepreneurial spirit that this community needs, and just want to applaud you for that. My friends that opened the Duvernay in the 80s would have loved something like this.
Yeah.
Instead of floating around all over town trying to find where to make it. This is great, so I applaud you.
Great, thank you very much. Yeah.
Looks like we slid into discussion. Happy to keep it there unless we have any more questions. You look like you want to, Commissioner Rohrmeyer? Please.
Commissioner Rohrmeyer for discussion. I want to second my fellow commissioners' comments. This is such a wonderful use. I understand those conversions of public facilities are so challenging, and I want to thank you for willingness and recognition of the time and money that could have probably gone to resources that help community members, but went to this exercise instead.
Thank you.
Ready to make a motion?
Please do.
On the case number LDC 24-00007, notable music therapy services, based on compliance with the applicable findings, I move to recommend that City Council approve the zoning map amendment by ordinance, and I can make the findings.
Nice.
We have a motion,
Becerra, second.
and we got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all approved, or all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passed. Thank you. Congrats and good luck with your project.
Thank you.
I jumped the gun a little there, sorry. Item 5.5, case number LDC 24-00006, Saya Truck Terminal. We'll get a presentation from Sev.
Real quick, I need to recuse myself from this
Okay.
item.
Thank you. Good.
All right, good evening. For the record, Sev Carlson with Kempfer Kroll, here on behalf of the property owner and applicant, Saya Freight Line LLC. So we have for you tonight an application for a conditional use permit and for alternative equivalent compliance. So the project's located at 4580 Mill Street. It's about, I think, 750 feet east of the intersection of Mill Street and Rock Boulevard. We're talking about a site that's just under 11 acres, and we're proposing a warehouse building of approximately 37,000 square feet with a shop building of approximately 13,500 square feet across 3 parcels that are subject to reversion to acreage application that's pending. Zoning for the property is industrial commercial. All the property to the west, east, and south is also zoned industrial commercial, with mixed employment zoning on the other side of Mill Street, which is largely property owned by the Truckee River Flood Management Authority and will likely never have any development on it. The conditional use permit is required for the truck terminal use. And then with respect to the uses around us, to the south and to the east, is owned by NV Energy. It's primarily offices, and then they store various equipment on that property. So that's a typical industrial commercial use. To the west, we have kind of, commercial industrial flex space. I think there's a solar company, kind of a variety of businesses that are located there. The master plan land use is mixed employment. And so that the master plan obviously wants a wide range of employment opportunity. The underlying use is conducive to that. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. But when you take a look at where we're at this intersection, we're in a good location for what used to be an agricultural property and is now surrounded really by industrial properties. So we've talked about the CUP with respect to the alternative equivalent compliance. Really it's focused on the warehouse building's orientation on Mill Street and where the bays are, and the way that we have site constraints on the properties. And so normally under code, you wouldn't want those bays facing Mill Street. But the way that the property is laid out physically, geographically, we have some alternative ways of keeping that design in place and using landscaping as a buffer so that it's not as visible from Mill Street. So here's the existing site. Corner to corner, we have the existing flex space industrial stuff on the west, and then we have the NV Energy yard to the south and to the east, and then we have Mill Street here. So for the site plan, we have Mill Street at the top of the page. We'll have controlled access into the site. It's gated, it's surveilled. We have parking that comes up here. We have a fenced area that actually then you have to come in through a gate into the terminal. We have the shop to the east of the entrance, and fueling. The shop is only for fleet vehicles, for small repairs and regular maintenance. And then we have the warehouse building, which is the larger building, which has cross dock where trucks can pull up and have trailers on either side. For Saya, the trailers do not have, trucks don't have backup beepers. The hostlers don't have backup beepers. All that equipment has idle kill switches that kills the idle after 5 minutes. And primarily we'll have only fleet vehicles coming in. We do have a condition of approval that we're agreeing to the extent we have non-fleet vehicles coming in. The terminal operator will tell those vehicles that they can't idle for more than 5 minutes if they don't have such a kill switch on their vehicles. Floor plan, so this is the warehouse building. We also have some office on the west side. Some more with respect to the warehouse building floor plan. Shop floor plan, pretty basic, and it has office and break room as well. With respect to the preliminary landscape plan, primarily we have landscaping along that Mill Street section, and for the alternative compliance, we're looking at having landscaping rather than double rows of trees, but having some on one side of the Pioneer Ditch and some on the other side of the Pioneer Ditch, which is something that's staying in place. This property will no longer take water from the Pioneer Ditch because it's not an agricultural property anymore. So the point of diversion will be closed. We're in agreement with the condition that, with the closure of that point of diversion, water will still flow through the Pioneer Ditch as it always has. There just won't be a diversion onto this property since there's no more agriculture to irrigate. Here are elevations. This is the warehouse elevation with the office. And then the cross dock on both sides of the building. A little bit enlarged just so you can see a little more detail. Here's the elevation for the shop. And then we have the photometric plan. The site will be under 100,000 lumens total in compliance with code. And then, we can look at the general findings. So again, we're in mixed employment for the master plan designation. We've become more and more of an economy in Reno where logistics are significant as a part of our economy. Saya is moving its facility from Sparks, which it leases currently, to this location. So it's becoming a property owner for its own facility rather than leasing a facility. It'll operate 24 hours a day, employ approximately 120 people across 3 shifts. And when we look at the other kind of logistics, manufacturing, and industrial uses in proximity to this site, we're consistent with that. So other than where we have the alternative equivalent compliance as to how the warehouse building is facing Mill Street and how we've solved that issue with the additional landscaping on both sides of Pioneer Ditch, we're in compliance with the development code. We don't have material traffic impacts for a warehouse. And even having the shop on site, that reduces having third parties who would typically repair trucks and trailers from having to come on site. So we're not moving vehicles off the site or bringing other vehicles on for mobile service. I'd also note, with respect to the traffic, we have the traffic engineer's letter that indicated there's low trip generation. And I think typically when you look at a terminal, this isn't a traditional terminal. Typically terminals are considered intermodal, where you'd have a seaport, you'd have rail. We don't have that here, so you don't have the same type of traffic impact that you would have on a traditional terminal site, which the engineers rely on that designation. It's really intermodal in nature. This one is not an intermodal site. With respect to safe environment, we're keeping the sidewalks, keeping the bus route. We'll have restricted access into the terminal site, 24/7 surveillance as well. If we want to go over CUP findings, I'm happy to, but I know the evening's going on, so I'm just going to click through them so Brooke can get on to his presentation and questions, but I'm comfortable in saying we can meet all the findings for the CUP as well as the alternative compliance. All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Seth. Appreciate it. Looks like we will get a presentation from Brooke.
Once again, good evening, Planning Commission. Brooke Oswald, Associate Planner for the record. Move through this. We are in Ward 3. That is project site. I pulled out a little bit further. You can see the airport directly to the west there, and a large kind of building footprint surrounding the site, indicating industrial or industrial uses for the most part surrounding the site. Additionally, you can see the Truckee River and the Greenway corridor that runs directly to the north of the site. Pulling a little bit closer, the project site is approximately 11 acres, consisting of 3 parcels. So because of the development, what happens, we do have what's called a reversion to acreage. So all of those will be going into one parcel. Additionally, we have a couple other permits in right now. We have a demolition permit. I also processed a demolition permit several years ago. If you've driven by the site, you probably have seen a brick home up on beams for several years now. So that is now being relocated, and we have another demolition site permit for some of the other structures on site. We also have our building permit in currently. We'll be making the modifications if this is approved, subject to the conditions that are here now. There are 2 things we are in for. We're in for that conditional use permit. Now, if this was a traditional warehouse, this would go straight to permit, and we've seen a lot of those. This is unique in that it's a truck terminal. I think this is one of the first that I've ever processed. They are unique in that they don't have the warehousing. They're really dock to dock, and so they call them cross dock. So they're moving from one truck to another. So it is a unique sort of industrial and trucking use. Additionally, we have that an alternative equivalent compliance. That's for our building orientation, how they decided to move the building to really accommodate that building to the site itself. Additionally, we have articulation. That's an I can't say the 2 words together. Architectural articulation. So I'll go into a little bit more detail when we pull up the elevations. Big things we looked at this is that compatibility with the surrounding uses, their operations, and then some of the visual impacts. So once again, to go over this, the project site, you can see the airport. This is that Greenway, Truckee River Greenway I talked about. It is owned by the Truckee River Flood Authority. It is a critical floodplain. We do not, even though the zoning and master plan indicate different, we do not anticipate that developing in the future. This is MB Energy. Looks a little like the Millennium Falcon there, but they have their offices, a number of their storage yards, and the large black directly to the north is a big sort of staging and storage area that they use, MB Energy uses. And then finally, directly to the west, we have a flex industrial office uses that front along Mill. So all their office uses access is coming off of Mill Street. When we really look at what is directly adjacent to the site, those are those back bay doors or back doors. And so we're not seeing those directly out to the offices. Quickly go over the Reimagine Reno master plan. It is a mixed employment master plan. There are several things that this supports. Those are those industrial hubs, our truck traffic, creating employment centers. As we're looking at this, as was noted and detailed by the applicant, we would anticipate approximately 120 workers coming in with this project. On the industrial commercial side, that allows a variety of these industrial uses. That also does allow 24-hour operation, and they will be utilizing that in their operations. Quickly looking at the process site, we have 2 access points. They're directly off Mill. We have the main truck access point, which comes to a gate and then is gated, and then we have the employee parking area that you see directly off with its own access. What staff really likes about that is we're separating that truck traffic and vehicle traffic off there and creating that safety. You have the direct access, vehicle access. Then we look at our main building. This is a little deceptive, and I outlined it because those are actually concrete that move outside of that. To the west side, you can see the entrance ticket there. That's their office areas, break rooms, and some of that. Then we have our shop building. This is traditionally, we're pushing that up front, kind of with the architecture up front. The bay doors do not face forward. They face sideways in this and be using it. It is only for the truck traffic. We're not, or the business itself, no additional traffic, and it has additional offices. And then, as you can see, there's a little line. It's a little hard to see, but there is a pedestrian access that sort of moves through the site. We will have the traditional sidewalk coming off, the access to our businesses through that, but they have an internal pedestrian system. As you can see, they have crosswalk areas. There are some conditions that make sure those are adequately striped and worn so that we have that safety. We have an additional one down here. So as we look at that building orientation, you can see the long building is oriented that way. We have bay doors on both the north, south, and east end of that, approximately 38, 37 doors on the north and east and 5 on the end. Our code states that bay doors should not face out to the public right away. And that's why we're in for that alternative equivalent compliance, is because of the facing of those bay doors. So as we're looking at that alternative of compliance, the elevations of the building here, I think the top one's a good one to start with. Now that their office is a main office, you can see they have a lot of articulation, color use, different materials that they're using on that far end of the building. This is that building that sits up against the flex office space on that side. This is where that would be. As you see, as it runs down the bay door thing, it becomes, it's a function, forms following function in this thing. This is set up to distribute that. And the city code has certain articulation standards which require pop-outs and different sort of things. And so in staff and looking at this, the appropriateness of the building and its form and everything, and distance, and providing additional landscaping that is conditioned, staff is comfortable that we're really mitigating that visual element, and that articulation does not add much more in this petition and really takes away from the general function of the building itself. And then, once again, as I explained, that orientation. The landscape, it will meet all the landscape requirements of that IC zoning. There are some existing trees on site. We do have some code requirements. If those are in the front setback, there is a tree penalty that will be applied to providing additional trees on site. And then, also working with anything that we can preserve in that site through their development to preserve those larger existing trees. It does require that Mill Street buffering, and then condition 5, as I mentioned, requires additional landscape as part of that building orientation and articulation. We're requiring additional buffering up along that street. We have worked with the applicant. We had initial, in this area is where we would see condition 5 applying. We did work with the applicant to put this together, they had some concerns, basically because they have that ditch that was mentioned up front, and it makes it very challenging for them to get in that double row. So they did, working with their design team, they provided some alternative language. Staff has read through this. We are in agreement with this and would recommend this amendment to condition 5. We could make all the conditional use permit findings and the alternative equivalent compliance findings. And with that, I'll leave you with the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Brooke. Appreciate it. All right, we'll go to the commissioners for disclosures. Commissioner Becerra, please.
Commissioner Armstrong, I'm familiar with the site.
Commissioner Munoz, familiar with the site?
Commissioner Villanueva, I visited the site.
Commissioner Draculich, I'm familiar with the site, and Carl would like to jump in.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to speak to Ms. Rohrmeyer's recusal. She indicated that she worked for the applicant on this particular project, and she consulted with our office, and we advised her to recuse. So I just want to make sure we had a clear record on that. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, with that said, Michelle, any public comment, request to speak forms?
No request to speak forms, no voicemails, and no correspondence received. And there's no one on Zoom raising their hands.
Thank you. Anybody in the chambers wish to speak on this item? Seeing none, we will close public comment and move it to the commissioners for questions of the applicant or staff. Commissioner Munoz.
Actually ready to jump into discussion.
Please do, sir.
I visit this area often as I have different things I need to do for work back there. And this area and the location that they chose to do this, I think, is a great location for that, with Mill Street, a rock right there to get to back to I-80, McCarran just east of this, and then the airport back to 395 or 580. This is a great area for this. I think it's a good use of this land. I am always hesitant to see any agricultural land, which is limited in our area, used for something other than that. But this is a great use of that, and I have no problems with it. So I'll be approving this. I'll be voting yes on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Becerra? No? I saw your hand by the button, buddy.
Oh, no, I was just going to double down on Commissioner Muniz's sentiment there. So I'm all for it.
Great. Seeing like there may be no more questions or discussion, we will entertain a motion.
Commissioner Munoz, I'll make a motion. The case number of LDC 24-00006 Saya Truck Terminal, based upon compliance with the applicable findings, I move to approve the conditional use permit and alternative equivalent compliance subject to conditions listed in the report, and I can make all the findings.
We have a motion, but it looks like Mike or Brooke wants to jump in.
Would you just add for the record
Please.
to amend the condition as amended?
Commissioner Munoz?
And to amend the conditions as amended, as discussed in the the city's presentation.
Okay.
Sorry, thank you.
Satisfactory?
Commissioner Villanueva, I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes. Good luck on your project. Oh.
I'll grab her.
You got it. Thanks. All right, closing item 5, moving on to item 6, Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Liaison Report. Mike, you want to jump in?
Yes, we do not have a liaison report this evening from Truckee Meadows Regional Planning.
Okay, then we will close item 6, move to item 7, staff announcements.
Yes, just a quick update on some planning division projects. As I mentioned at our last meeting, the appeal of the Taylor Street multifamily project was scheduled for city council. They withdrew that appeal. They found another route forward. amongst themselves, so that appeal was not heard by City Council, and the Planning Commission's recommendation for denial stands. The Valley View Estates project, which I think you heard 2 cycles ago, that will go to City Council next week, next Wednesday. The council will hear that. And also, as I mentioned last week, Lauren Knox from planning will be giving you a presentation on the master plan and its interaction with the Truckee Meadows Regional Plan at the November 1st meeting. So that will be on our agenda. And then I was asked by Commissioner Becerra in regards to the code update. You should all be receiving an email from Angela Foose, Assistant Development Services Director, this week with the latest from the user groups that she's been working with, the stakeholder groups. And then once those are essentially refined into the final draft, she will be making a presentation to the Planning Commission on those updates as well. So those will be coming up at future meetings.
Thank you. And our next meeting is November 1st. Do I have that right?
Correct.
Okay, great. All right, thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. Close item 7, open item 8, Commissioner suggestions for future agenda items. Commissioner Munoz.
Thank you. This is not a suggestion, just a recognition for the city. The Dorothy McCacklin Park off of Stead Boulevard has been completed. There's a grand opening on Saturday. And I just want to say that I really commend the city and the work they did up there. The park looks amazing. They're doing a great job. And I know the residents in Ward 4 are really going to appreciate that and use that park. So just want to say thank you to the city for all of their work.
Sweet. Love to hear it. There you go. Golf clap. All right, closing item 8, moving to item 9, public comment. This item is for either public comment on any action item or for any general public comment. Michelle.
No correspondence, no voicemails, and no request to speak forms.
And seeing no one in the chambers, we will close item 9 and move to item 10, adjournment.
So moved.
All right. Everybody have a good evening. Oh, we got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.